So, yeah. And so maybe looking at, I don't know, being tired, like, so it's like, okay, so I'm tired out of having to look at details, right? And then we're talking about,
Yeah. And I think that that's what I'm getting stressed over, small stuff, and that's creating the hives for me.
right.
Things
Well,
that really don't matter.
then I'm sure it's not comfortable with hives and having your air conditioning broken down in your bedroom either.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So, did you want to go sleep in another part of the house?
Well, we tried, but it just, it's the back air conditioners already functioning only on low. And Becca doesn't mind because she's not real hot anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the guest room. So the main part of the house, you can sleep on the couch, one of two couches, or the twin bed in what used to be my dad's room.
Mm-hmm.
Or the floor. So that's what we tried, but finally at, I guess about 3:30, I went back and got in bed. We had a fan blowing from the rest of the house into the bedroom to try to cool it down.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it just felt like I didn't go to bed till 3:30.
And then you think, like you're saying, like you think, well, what's this about? And then it's like, well, I'm so tired of like, what's this about? Let's just flow through this. Let's just have it all flow through, like, in a way that's.
Why do I have to see it?
Yeah. Why? Yeah. Exactly.
If I just open to the flow.
Exactly. I agree to the flow. I agree to let it shift.
Yeah.
So let's just do that easily, right?
Right.
And I think that's part of it too, like, because it is like sort of the same with the freaking, the animals, right? And you said with the dog, with you, and with my, like, and I have my cat with his like weird diarrhea thing going on, almost diarrhea thing because it's like soft poo, and
well, and you just get to the point where it's like, at what point does this no longer involve me?
Yeah. Yeah, and then it's like, well, because you don't even want to put and it's not that you don't care; it's that you're just tired of having to put the energy to it, and it's like, well, why is it my responsibility? Why is it, right?
And feeling powerless to make it anything but what it is.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's what it ties back to, is the powerless. Powerful versus powerless.
Yeah.
Which is something we brought up last week.
Not until the end of the week. It wasn't for this.
It was the end of the week, right. And combining the power of separation.
Right. And I had these weird dreams all weekend.
Oh.
And it's almost like instead of like letting it be a force against you, utilize the energy behind it to create more of a force in wholeness, right?
Right. So it's almost like the energy for judging it and resisting it and everything else, and addressing it and holding it in place, repurpose that energy.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the reason for the fatigue, is we're finally seeing what it takes to hold it in place.
And we're just like, yeah, I'm not ready. I don't want to be part of it anymore. I'm ready to be done with that. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And then sit there and say, well, how do I be done with it? How do I just let this go?
Yeah. And to me, it feels like it's going back to the agreements, the collective agreements.
Right.
On holding this all in place. Right.
And the forgiveness of ourselves for allowing those agreements perpetuating it. What did I write down? Of course, the cat's laying on it. Doesn't want me to see it. Serious self-loathing, hating, time to pay for the consequences of separation, our perceived consequences for separation, and for creating it and perpetuating it. So it's that self-forgiveness. For knowing that we're powerful and choosing to be powerless.
Except are we anymore? It's like I'm ready to just be done with the powerless part, right?
Right. That's what I'm saying is we've spent these iterations in that believing we were powerless. And I'm
and actually enjoying it.
Right.
I know people like
and fighting to stay there.
I know. And that's what's going on with many right now. I was talking about that, Share Friday night. We were talking about what the harder you try to hold on to it now, the worse it seems to be getting, right?
Right.
So
and it's like I'm tired of looking at how to let go of it.
Yeah, because I'm just like, I keep on saying, okay, let it go, let it go, let it go. But then it keeps on coming back, and it's like, well, and then I tried to like just let it sort of manage itself, or not try to. I just go say, okay, fine, then it'll manage itself because I'm letting go of that need to have that responsibility. And yet then it falls apart, and I'm like, well, what? And like in your case, it's like, well, so what? Do you choose then to live in a place where you're going to be in the hundreds all summer without air conditioning in your room? No, it's not going to fix itself, right?
Right. It's supposed to be 109 next Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, when does it get 109 the first week of June here? Never.
Right. Yeah. And so there's a part of me that sits there, and this is what has been going on with me in my head. And I think that's why I'm getting all wound up over really something relatively, it would be relatively minor, right? With the cats, right?
Right.
It's because it's like, oh my God, I feel this pattern again, right? It's going to end up being on my shoulders, and I'm going to like try for it to not be, or not try, but I'm going to say, okay, it isn't. I'm going to let it, blah, blah, blah. And I'll trust this vet, or I'll trust whatever. And then it ends up failing. And then I feel guilty because then I feel like I failed. Right.
Right.
And yeah, I'm done with that cycle.
Something that I've been looking at that fits that same pattern is that, if you look at self-respect, it's like, it just seems so hard because I feel like it's going to be a fight, a struggle.
So much energy, and it feels even heavier and even more like
than just staying where you are.
Yeah.
Right. Which I was looking at that this morning, and it's like, that puts it outside of me instead of already within me, which is still that powerlessness.
Mm-hmm. Now I'm pausing this for a moment. So, yeah, and so, all right. So let me tell you about this series of dreams from Saturday night. Somehow, because it keeps on pinging at me. So, I can't remember which order they were in, because it was like this whole series of dreams that I kept on waking up and going back to sleep. But they were all related to this. It was all the same thing, even though they were different dreams, right? So all I remember is the last one, because you were in the last one with me, and you were the one going, this might not be a linear thing. But it started out, I was, where did I go? I went, and it was like every dream, it was like a different dimension or timeline or whatever, right? Like a different piece. And I didn't realize that because I was trying to fit it into the linear thing, right, in the dreams. But so, God, I can't even, I should have written this down because I told Scott about it too. So one of them, so the whole like idea throughout all of them was that I was trying to I needed to go and do a couple different things and get a couple different things. And then get back to Scott, who was getting some kind of operation. He had some kind of operation, or he was getting some kind of operation. And so, like, it was almost like it was upstate New York when I lived in New York. It was just such an interesting thing because it was like, in one dream, I'm trying to remember which ones were which. One dream, I was at my sister's house with Obi for some reason. And she had like all these cats all over the place. And several of them had really bad diarrhea that were bloody. And like, it was like funny. And of course that's on my, like, because his not that bad. You know? And I was telling my sister in the dream, you probably should get them to the vet. And then I was in a hurry to get out of there because I didn't want him to get, you know, whatever it was they had, you know. So I was like, okay, no. But, and there was like some big party there that everybody was crashed, and like it was all like a young adult party, and I was trying to find everybody to say bye to them before I left. So that was one of them. And everyone, I think I had to stop and get something, but I can't remember what it was. And another one, I had stopped to, I had some kind of meeting, and there was some weird construction thing going on, and I was needing to get back to my car so that I could go down to see Scott when he was done with his operation. And Lisa and Rochelle were in that one, and they were like, oh, we'll take you to your car. And I get in the car, and then I realized they're driving me down to Scott, and I'm like, no, I need my car. So I was like, I need my car. It's like, I mean, I appreciate you guys driving me, but my car is there. I just needed to get to my car. So then they were taking me back. Or no, Lisa got out for some reason. Then Rochelle was taking me back. And then there was another dream, another part where I stopped to see Brianna, and who had her boyfriend there, and they were packing for her to, to move out. And she's like, Mom, are you going to stop? You're going to stay and help? And I was like, no, I can't. Your dad just is like, I need to go, whatever. So when I was in that one, I had talked to Scott, and I said, all right, I'm on my way. And it was literally like 4:00 in the morning. I was like, and he's like, are you really going to be able to drive 4 or 5 hours? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And I was like, but there's a trick to this that I'm missing. And I kept on saying this in the dream. It's like, there is something to this that I'm missing that's holding me up, right? So then the last dream, you and I were in a car, and I swear it was like Mexico. For some reason, it felt like Mexico, even though everybody spoke English. And we were driving. You were coming with me, and we were driving through this town, and there's this big parade. Oh no, what happened was we're on the highway, and it reminded me of when we were in Shasta and we went the wrong way. Remember, we took like in Medford, we took the wrong way, right?
Oh yeah.
Until like 20 minutes later. So we're going the wrong way in the highway, and I'm like, this doesn't look right. And you're like, yeah, I think we would. And then you're like, no, I think we need to turn around. So we turn around, but we had to go through this town, and they're having this parade. And in the parade, like, so everything was like backed up. And I was like, okay, I'm so done with this. And I was like, all right, let's just take this back road. So we go in this back road, and we literally are crawling through this back road at like maybe 5 miles an hour. And this lady is walking in this, she gets out of her car. She's like our age, in our age group. She's got maybe like an 8 or 9 year old boy with her. And she gets out of a car that was parked. And we're literally crawling like 5 miles an hour. The car is barely moving, right? And the boy comes towards the car, and he literally jumps on the hood. And I was like, what? And I stop the car, I get out, and the mother's like, she's like, oh, he's okay and everything's all right. And I'm like, yeah, okay, good. Well, then everything's okay. We don't have to call, about insurance. Everything's fine. She's like, oh, no, we definitely need to call the police. And so there's this whole thing of I'm like going, okay. And then I realized that she was scamming, like doing a scam thing or whatever,
Right. Yeah.
So she calls the police and I knew the cop, and the cop was like, and he said something to me. He's like, okay, well, if you could just answer me all in French, which was so weird. He goes, if you could answer me all in French, it will just like call this whole thing done. And I did. I just started talking to him in French, and he's like, oh, I obviously picked the right language, and da da da. And so we get back in the car, and I was like, and I said to you, Sarah, this is like bizarre world. I swear I'm living in bizarre. And you said, well, maybe that's what it is. Maybe we need to stop trying to look at things in a linear way. Like, like you don't have to drive down. You don't have to drive anywhere. You can just be there. It's a,
right.
And so, and I can't remember. And it was like, finally at the end, I was like, you're right. And then that was like sort of when everything resolved and I woke up. Right. So there's something really significant about that whole series of things.
Well, while you're saying that, I'm like, okay, we're assuming we're at the end of this. What if we're really just at the beginning?
Well, but there is no beginning or end, right? It just is.
Right. But we're behaving as if this is
the final race, right?
The resolution. So if we treat this as if it's just the beginning and we can make it or not make it,
okay, yeah, let's keep that out there because that seems significant. And let's go back to then what we talked about on Friday, which was the big puker.
Yeah. Yeah, and I felt better about that after Saturday. I mean, I was pretty keyed up, and the hives let up, and then they've been building back since then.
So that started with that discussion of being powerful or the perception of powerful or powerless, right?
Right.
And the recognition of it's only a matter of letting go. So like, in a session that I did Friday, it was seeing the client with those like matrix like tubes connected to her back, right?
Right.
And it was like, well, why are you letting those hold you back? And all I need to do is take them out. And she was like, well, but then I won't be here. Like, it was almost like this, but then I won't be here. And it's like, but that's your choice. Like, we've chosen these parameters. We can change them, right?
Right, right.
Be in the matrix and not of it. So that started that discussion, right? And then we were talking about, what was the intermediary thing before I had the other? Because we had another epiphany before then. It's hard to remember the
sequence
of how it all came in. But then I was sort of sitting on that whole thing. Well, and I was not even really thinking about it. I was in the car going someplace. And then that's when that thought came in was, well, what happens if you came back? What would happen if you came back lifetimes later and found
the Trinity stuff?
The Trinity stuff. Would you pick it up and just pick it up where you left off? And I was like, well, first of all, why would I come back? Because I thought I was doing after this. That was the first thing. But that was my first thing. I was like, wait a second, that was a weird thought. Because I wasn't even like thinking about Trinity. I wasn't thinking about any of that. And then I was like, well, yeah, of course I would. And then, then there's this thought, well, would you recognize that was you that started to begin with? I'm like, I don't know. Does it even matter? Like, does it really matter? It doesn't, because it's all me, right?
Right, right.
And then the next And then I was like, well, what's the relevance of this? Like, because it was like almost not even a thought. It was just something like being, like suggested to me, And then it was like, well, what is this relevant for? And I heard or understood it was like, well, that's what you're doing right now. Right. And then that's where that whole thing, then it was like, oh my God, that was where the big
Kraken.
Yeah, release the Kraken. That was when the big like download started and all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God. And it was just like all of these flashes and whatever. But the really important part of that you and I discussed had to do with and recognize that as powerful as this practice is now, it is still a dumbed down version of the original.
Right.
I was like, what? But as soon as I knew that, I knew that. And I was like, well, of course it is. Right.
Right.
And it's like, well, it's more powerful than pretty much most anything out right now, but there's still like this big, and I was like, oh, that's right. Because when we were talking about the powerless versus being powerful, that's when I said, well, I feel like there's some lever there or something that's starting to like, remember it was like shift that hasn't moved in a really long time and it feels really uncomfortable. Remember?
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember
that all weekend. That was before that happened. And as soon as this all came in, it was like, oh, yep, that's what's shifting. That thing I wanted to hold shut, right?
Right.
But then I'm like, well, why would I want to hold it shut, right? So why do we want to hold it back? Like, why would we want to prevent ourselves from really being 100% of that divine power that we truly are? And then obviously there's some kind of, fear. There's some kind of agreement, judgment.
Yeah, I feel a lot of fear for being judged on why we did it anyway.
Well, why we limited it, you mean? Yeah, and then it took, of course, me back to these flashes of that higher dimensional place that I always thought was ancient Egypt, but it was actually way older, right?
Right.
That we actually hate to remember as much as we love to remember it.
Right. It's where we practice separation.
Right. Well, goddesses, the gods, goddesses, and the non-gods, goddesses, like
right.
Kind of.
Yeah. See, and I think about that, and I just go, yeah, yuck. Yuck. Don't want to think about that.
Yeah, I know. Well, and then there is the part that's in that part of that existence where you had the real first experience of what we call darkness, like
right. Evil.
I guess, we didn't even know to call it. I mean, we didn't call it that. We just didn't. It was created as a byproduct. Right, because it's part of separation, right?
Right, and when I hear shadow side, it's the part we choose to not see.
Yeah. Ugh, it just feels so icky. So obviously there's still judgment there. And so I was like, okay. And then I was like, well, so is it, are we to bring that back? Are we to, open that lever so that it allows the full remembrance?
And why would we not? What would ever be the reason to not?
And I was like, yeah, but it's like, it's like, so what is there to do? Because I was like, yeah, okay. And that was what I said, right? When we were talking, I said, yeah, well, okay, let's just release the Kraken,
Right.
Let's screw it. And let's do with ease and flow. And it's like, and that there was a place inside of me that recoiled, and even hearing myself say those words, but at the same time, it's like, let's just do it already.
Right. Right.
And so that has been, and you know what? I haven't been able to take time for myself to sit in meditation with that ever since that discussion.
I know.
I've done some work, but it's all been like on the fly. It's like, yeah, I'll get to that later.
Right. And it's been Band-Aids.
Yeah. Maybe it's my cat helping to distract me.
Right.
Obi. So,
well, maybe that's what we need to do is, whatever needs to be done to propel that.
yeah. I mean, we
to hold that energy, because there is no forward.
Yeah, and we only fear what we judge, right? In some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Fear comes from judgment.
Right. Right.
And again, it's the belief that there's something outside of us, right? Because that darkness, and maybe it was because we created, or we believed, well, or we did create that, what we consider darkness, from the pure creation at the level of separation that we did, right?
Yeah.
Or it's not quite it. There's something else in there. It's like, and it was also, then the other part of that was going back to all these times over the years where, I had these interesting visions of being called to counsel, so to speak, and asked, are you still committed to what you volunteered to do? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. I don't remember what it is, but okay. And the first time I was really nervous about it. And every time after that, I'm like, yeah. And now it was like, with all of that coming in, I was like, yeah, because part of the agreement was in. And it's not just me, it's a bunch of us that have held that we were there for that. Actually, a lot of us that were there for that. And we agreed. That's the seed that we've been holding, right? That seed of remembrance. And the thing that I held up, or is volunteered to do, is say, okay, I will make sure this gets re-anchored in full power and full remembrance, even if I am the last one standing. Which, and I remember that was exactly the words that came into me, and I was like, okay, so how about that? That doesn't even feel, and I'm like, but that so what does the mind go? The mind goes to a whole bunch of other things. It's like, well, it could be a lot of things. It doesn't have to be, it's like, it's truly staying centered while this all comes back.
Right.
While the breath comes back in, right? Because, if we talk about it without time, and that, going to that more circular thing, it can be a breath, an out and in kind of thing, we do it, it's done. We do it, it's done, right? And maybe it's just holding whatever's to be done to, because we've taken a really long breath, but there is no long, right?
Right.
It's just to ensure the completion is anchored in, right? For whatever reason. I don't know. I don't even want to think about it.
I know.
I'm just feeling it. And so the thing is just feeling through it and saying, okay. So, but every time I talk about it, it comes up in here, and it's like, oh, I just want to puke it up. Because when this first started coming in, I'm in the car, and I was like, oh, I just want to puke. And I didn't have my phone. I was going to call you. And I was like, well, shit, I have to introduce myself. but and I know that's a lot of us, right? As soon as one of us allows it, the rest of us will.
Right.
Or, yeah. Wow, that didn't even come to me to that moment. It's like, well, or they're the ones that are fighting it and would rather go the other way and step away from it, but they will too. In that moment where we finally, one of us finally accepts it, all of us will. That was the agreement, I guess, right?
Yeah, that feels right.
So,
which any feelings of lack of support probably are based in those that are really trying to not do this right now.
Because we're all so connected in it, right? Oh, that makes so much sense, right?
Yeah.
How did we not see this before?
I'm sure on some level we did.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness. So Friday night at Share, we just said, let's just really, yeah, we were talking about that. Just whatever is to flow with to release the Kraken, right? And it's funny because I don't really ever use those words. It's funny that that just came out. And you know, the way I look at it is, it's our choice what that the Kraken is, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Is it a loving, furry, like lovable pet, or is it some mean monster that's going to tear everything down, right? Is it something that's a show of support of our own ability to create and create again, right? Or is it something that works against us because we fear it and fight against it, right? And so, like, because most people know what that means or have an idea of what that means when you say, you know, release the Kraken.
Right, right.
So, with mythology and stuff. So the first time I said that, I was like, oh my God, there's that voice inside me like, what are you saying? I can't believe you just said that. Like, what? And of course, I said it again at Share Friday night, and was it Yashmin turns to Scott, and she's like, "Oh, and you're going to be byproduct of that." And I was like, I actually felt Scott flinch a little bit when I said that, and I'm like, but that's our choice. Our choice is: does that mean like fabulous, awesome, accelerated shift and growth and expansion,
Right.
or does that mean fearful and clinging and collapsing and exploding
And
that's
destruction and darkness and right.
Do you want to see it as death, or do you want to see it as birth?
Right.
That's the choice.
Right.
Because remember I said when I say that, I feel the energy of like Kali, right?
Right.
Right, which is birth and destruction? Creation, destruction at the same place, right? So, and that goes along with what we're saying, but that is truly this little fine lever of, maybe that's the lever. It's just allowing it all. And loving it all no matter what it looks like, right?
Right.
Which we're so out of the practice of. Even in our words.
Oh, yeah.
So, I guess we could say more of that. So we could flow with it. Excuse me. Flowing. And you said, well, it's the funniest Memorial Day weekend, right? So, like, you know, because remembering, it's time to remember. At that level,
right.
At that level of power of creation. You know, and there are, like, yeah, okay, so there are the 3 bajillion fears that everyone has. Oh, that the power is abused. The power can't be abused. The power of being divine consciousness, there's no such thing, because abuse has to do with duality.
Right.
Right. Yeah, oh, and I had asked when all this came into me, remember we were talking, and I said, so what is there to do to open that lever so it is fully flowing? And I got to be in full acceptance and love, no matter what. No matter what, which it really falls into play that that's what this is, right?
Because that's what I got with my hives over the weekend, was that, you know, they're a result of whether it's scratching or a perceived itch or whatever. And if I just accept and not facilitate it.
And love it. Not just accept, but like love it.
Right. Right. It wouldn't.
How awesome to have these itchy hives all over my body. How amazing that I can create that.
Right. Right. Instantly.
Right. See how powerful I am. And that's the underlying judgment, because there's a part of you that says, yeah, see how powerful I am. What a big freaking awesome party. Yay. To have these hives, right?
Right.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's the hardest the most challenging for most is being able to get out of a place of judgment and victimhood to some degree. Excuse me. About, because there's, no matter how much we talk about it, there's always something that makes us shrink back in judgment, right? Or not just shrink back, but also assert ourselves in judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that, whatever that is, for the acceptance, for the unconditional love, like, and it sounds like we've talked about this a bajillion times, but this is a completely different level of it.
Oh, right.
Yet again. So whatever, to allow that to open full throttle in wholeness. Yeah. Because, I was talking last week on these calls about how it's time for Trinity, right? Did I not even say that before I even knew it's time for Trinity to come into its own, right?
Right.
Time for the practice to come into its own. And it's like, well, I put that cart before the horse. But I guess it is. Yeah. Because this is what we have had the habit of doing. We have had the habit of doing, this is enough, right? This is
right.
uber powerful, so this is enough. We don't need more than this. Because more than this would be trouble or scary or banned or judged or, But when you take that full responsibility for all of it, right? So it's my responsibility. It's my creation if I'm judged for it. Right? It's my creation if I'm banned or burned at the stake.
Right.
Or whatever. It's my
persecuted.
Creation.
Yeah. Right. There's no victims anymore.
No. And we can chalk that up to saying we actually had fun with it, right? Which many will say, oh my God, I can't believe you would say that. Like, what's fun about getting burned at the stake? I don't know, but if we didn't think it was fun, we wouldn't have created it.
Right.
In some way, shape, or form, right? And this is really acceptance. It's such a really deep, deep level, right? All the things that piss us off, we create, and we love them in some way.
Right.
It's time for us to accept it, that we love it. And also allow it to be in its wholeness and let it just fade away.
Which is a whole new level of the shadow side.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we always think of the shadow side as the evil, the deep, the dark. It's in minute to minute.
Yeah.
That feels really powerful.
Mm-hmm. And as we were talking about, because I'm like, okay, so part of what we had been talking about on Friday had to do with the power of even just a little tiny inkling of the full power of creation of divine consciousness, right? Was, think of the energy or what the power that created all of the separation to begin with, right?
Right.
The amount of energy and power that is behind that. Which then means that a lot of the power is in that darkness, right? Because
right.
The darkness is just the deeper separation. We see things that way. So, and what does that go back to? How many things? Wow, this ties together so many things we've talked about over the past several years doing these shares, like the feeling that we have a lot of things hiding in plain sight in the darkest parts of ourselves, right?
Right.
Well, right. Duh, wow, we're even telling ourselves the answers, but we're just not even listening.
Of course.
So,
well, that goes back to you have everything you need. Always have, always will.
Right, and that includes the dark part of ourselves.
Right.
Which is an essential part of us because it is part of the energy of creation, of separation. That's powerful.
Right.
There's your young.
Yeah, that was a nice shift.
So, oh my goodness, all of that is what I have
Yeah,
to say.
all of that.
All right, you ready? I think we're ready.
I think so. Kat's decided that she's had enough, and so yeah.
Yeah, Obi's been in and out like 5 times. Like, what are you doing in here? I'm going. I want to come in, but I'm going to go. All right, let's go.
All right.
Apparently we're done.
Oh, yeah. I think she didn't know where I was. She was calling me. Maybe she couldn't see me.
Maybe we were way out there. Oh, that was deep. That was really. Took me the first couple of minutes to even allow myself to go there. It was like,
yeah.
That felt really good, though. Release something. Not release, just open up something to.
There was so much judgment. It was like, I know this, that the judgment actually creates whatever it is. And without that, I mean, it's just all so, it's not even perfect, because that's judgment.
It just is.
Right.
Yeah, I saw so many layers of things. Because every layer I went to, there was another one inside of it, and another one inside of it. And finally, at the end, I can't even tell you, I saw all these different things. But at the very end, it was like I literally saw, you see those puzzle things where you'll see like the center, like it's like a circular thing where the center moves one way and then the next layer goes this way. It was like that all started like shifting and it was all moving out. And that felt so good. That's when your cat started to meow and I was like, oh, don't go. Oh, that felt really awesome at the end. A little uncomfortable in the beginning. There was a lot of resistance, not just with me and you, but like me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, this is going to be a really interesting week. As they all are, but, I can remember what it was because there was something in there. I was like, oh, I got to tell Sarah this, and I can't remember what it was. Oh my goodness. There was a part of me. So wait, I remember there was one there was one piece that I saw us floating out in space. I'm trying to remember what the context of that understanding was. It was like the removal of gravity leaves you without the need for propulsion, right? Because there is no gravity pulling you in one direction, right? Right. Then it was, but that wasn't just it. There was something else about it, and it was just really. That was when it started to really get deep and calm. Yeah, because if you remember this, then all the rest is easy. And then I was like, okay, and now if you remember this, and it was like really nice, but I don't remember all of it. And there really is no propulsion because it's all inside of us, right? As much as it's outside of us.
Right.
So no matter what the choice is, up, down, in, out, round, it's all within the whole. So. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. As always, fabulous insights. My thing froze up against the whole other thing. All right. I'm going to open this. We'll see y'all next week. Have a great holiday.